Welcome to Unit Design 101, where we break down the overall factors that make units useful in Fire Emblem and beyond. Whether you're a romhack creator or merely interested in overall design, this resource is for you. This week, we're taking a look at early game archers, why they're considered weak and worthless by the greater community, and what factors lead them to being more useful. The early game archer is often the first specialized combat unit that you have access to. They don't have non-combat utility such as flying or healing, and because bows are usually locked to 2 range, most archers cannot attack adjacent foes, meaning they often can only attack on player phase. This is counterbalanced by archers usually being the first dealers of effective damage in your army beyond your lord's rapier, because bows deal effective damage against flyers such as Pegasus Knights. Those are all of the static features of an early game archer. Stat-wise, they tend to be fairly average, often with lower strength or speed, but usually with a decent skill stat. Their defenses are usually a bit on the lower end, but they're not usually so fragile that they can't take a hit or two. They almost always join within the first 2 or 3 chapters, and are sometimes part of the initial team. Because of the way archers are designed, their value often lies not just in their own stats, but in the importance of their niche. Early game archers excel at dealing damage in ways that other units can't, either by attacking units that can't counter back, or by dealing significant damage to units like flyers who otherwise might be difficult to take down. Archers find this niche easily in games with uncommon or ineffective 1-2 range options for your other units, or in games where early flyers are common and particularly threatening. The stats of an early game archer only matter insofar as they allow the archer to hit accurately and deal enough damage to effectively defeat flyers. Often, the early archer tends to be left behind when their niche becomes unimportant. If your army gets other ways to effectively deal damage at range, or if enemy flyers are non-existent or not particularly threatening, then players will tend to drop early archers first, before benching other units that they consider more core to their army. This often leads to situations where early archers are used in the early game just to deal chip damage to key targets, but rarely end up getting kills themselves, leading to them not leveling up and being benched earlier. It's a thankless job to set up kills, but someone has to do it. Archers are most useful in games such as Shadow Dragon, New Mystery of the Emblem, and Engage, particularly on higher difficulties where their niche is more meaningful. Units such as Gordon or Etier are often used for a few chapters to assist with difficult bosses that happen to be locked to 1 range, or one-shotting flyers that would take other units multiple attacks to kill. Despite being very important for the first few chapters, even these archers are often abandoned a few chapters later because their niche is no longer useful, or their stats have been surpassed by better units. It's not uncommon for a pre-promoted sniper, like George, to join you and fill in the early archer's niche better in the mid-game with less investment. Gaiden and Shadows of Valentia make archers into training projects. They have lower stats and more limited weapon access than other unit types early on, but, if trained, are given access to powerful options that few other units get access to, such as the Bow Knight's 5-6 tile attack range, or SOV's Hunter's Volley on Killer Bow. This ends up having more overlap with trainees than most other early archers, so I do not consider this to be a core trait of early archers, though it is an option for them for long-term viability. Some games, such as Radiant Dawn or Vestaria Saga 1, have early archers that are useful for chip damage early on, but then are given unique weapons deeper into the game to maintain their usefulness. The Lugnasad for Leonardo or the Bow of Aragoth for Dune are powerful rewards for training these units, but even if they haven't been trained, these personal weapons still can extend their ability to contribute in the more difficult chapters where you may need someone who can safely attack at range. Games where early archers feel generally useless often lack a valuable need for their niche. Often, javelins and hand axes are plentiful and accurate, or enemies are weak enough that weakening without counters is not necessary. Sometimes the core mechanics of a game, such as the lower effective damage rate in FE7 and FE9, can also limit archers' usefulness. Some other features can increase the usability of archers even if their niche is not valued. Access to quick and effective support bonuses, such as Namies with Colm, can help them deal more damage at higher accuracy and smooth out their training arc. Terrain features like ledges in Radiant Dawn, or ballistas in GBA and Tellius, can provide additional map-specific niches beyond accurate 2 range and flyer effective damage. However, some archers can still suffer even in games where the overall design says they should succeed. Walt in Fire Emblem 6, for example, has too low skill to be perfectly accurate in the early game, and the threatening wyverns of Chapter 7 are far too strong to be effectively killed by Walt alone. He still provides value with 2 range access in a game that has both limited access to and highly inaccurate javelins and hand axes, and this is still valuable because enemies are so strong, but he does tend to fall off faster than other archers in similar situations because of his accuracy and damage issues. So to sum it all up, what have we learned about archers? First, their effective damage needs to be meaningful. If you want a good archer, put some flyers in the early game. Second, their 2 range needs to be meaningful, meaning if you want a good archer, you should limit or weaken javelins and hand axes. Third, their stats only matter relative to the enemy flyers and expected enemy avoid, meaning if you want archers to be useful, skill is very important, and strength is important mostly if enemy flyers have high hit points or defense. Fourth, you should expect players to bench them when their niche is no longer useful. This means that an effective archer doesn't necessarily need to be a long-term unit. However, if you want an archer to be a long-term unit, the long-term value they provide should be unique, such as massive range or unique skills. And that's it for this week's lesson on archers. If you have questions, ask them in the comments below. If you have a particular unit type you want discussed next, also leave that in the comments. A special thanks to LaguzGuard members C2 Peekali and Enigmatic Mr. L for supporting the channel directly. You can join in support for less than $1 a month. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is Mithril Zenith signing out.